think the potential for crowd energy is pretty high tonight and this weekend. What do you anticipate when it comes to the atmosphere on the South Side?
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. It should be electric in there. It always is. And, having our guys come into this series in a good spot, feeling like we're playing good baseball should be really exciting.
Well, I got to ask you because I think you've been playing such a clean version of baseball these last couple of weeks compared to maybe what we saw at the beginning of the season. What do you think has been the biggest difference in the way that you've played in winning 6 of your last 8 series and 11 out of your last 15?
Yeah, I think number one, the guys continue to come to the ballpark with really good energy. Obviously they're a connected group, which is great. But then you got to go out there and you got to execute. You got to make plays. You look at some of the underlying things that our guys are doing. At the plate and swing decisions, defensively with first step stuff. On the mound with maintaining count leverage. There's just a lot of good stuff going on, and it's really coming from every department, every player on the field.
I'm glad you brought up the count leverage too, Will, because I feel like this was a really good example last night of your team seeing a quality pitcher for a second time this season in Chris Bubich, the Royals pitcher. What were you able to get from him the first time around you guys saw him, and then to be able to have a much better performance as a lineup against him this time?
Yeah, I thought we had a good game plan on the first go-around. He just kind of dominated us, and it was really about the fastball. We just got beat with a ton of fastballs in the zone, and so that was an even greater point of emphasis this time around. The game planning was really good. Credit to Show and the hitting department, but these guys went out and did it. We just saw guys being aggressive to the fastball in the zone. We're able to negotiate some pitches on the edges of the zone and just put together really quality at-bats and got the pitch count up.
That's something that, Will, I remember you and I talking about in San Diego was your approach to the fastball. I feel like we're starting to see a team have a defined approach when it comes to that. I know each individual is different, but what do you think about just the way that your lineup has been able to approach it, have some defined at-bats that you talked about, and just really kind of adding to the example of last night's game?
Yeah, they're committed to it. We know that on both sides of the ball, fastballs are going to be a really important part of it. On the pitching mound, be able to command your fastball, and then on the hitting side, being able to move fastballs forward. And so these guys are committed to it. They go out, again, with Show's leadership on the hitting side. They go out and they train it well. They know which areas they're looking for, how to solve for different types of fastball. So it's really just part of kind of what we do every day, and they're finding different solutions to go out there and execute in the games.
Listen, well, I want to talk about Munetaka Murakami, and he's a big part of your success this season. But I do want to talk about somebody else that spent some time recently in Japan. Last night's starting pitcher, Anthony Kay. This is a journeyman by definition. The fact that he hasn't been in the major leagues, but he's out here now coming off his first career quality start, and now a 2.25 ERA in the month of May. What has been the difference this time around for Anthony Kay and his performance in your rotation?
Yeah, I think just throwing strikes, really. He's got really good stuff, and you could say this about really all of our pitchers. They have good enough stuff. When they're in the zone, they can be really effective, and we've seen that with Anthony, where early on, maybe just not the best command of his stuff. Obviously that's something that he prioritizes and he's working on, but these last few, he's really been able to execute, mixing different pitches, good use of the fastball, but it's all been in the zone and extremely competitive.
We are talking to the White Sox manager, Will Venable, on this Crosstown Friday here on Rahimi, Harris, and Grote. And Will, we also mentioned last night in the game how a little bit of a different lineup, and we see Randall Grichuk batting cleanup, and then you're able to get that production out of not just Grichuk's spot when he's in the lineup, but also you pinch hit for Sam Antonacci. He gets a hustle double. What do you think about just being able to get that kind of production in that spot specifically for extra base production?
Yeah, it's huge, and for us, obviously, we got the guys in the middle there that have been really consistent with Mooney and Vargas and Colson. But you look throughout our lineup, the guys that are on our bench as well, everyone is doing their job. Everyone is making an impact. I think a lot of it even shows up, without results. Guys are grinding at bats, really just passing the baton to the next guy. And that's what it takes. That's why we have had chances to win some of these games, is because, whether these guys are on the bench or in the game at the bottom of the lineup, they're doing everything they can to make an impact and contribute.
Speaking of Sam, I saw he came up after that pinch hit double a little bit lame, but I think after the game you said he just got hit by a pitch and that he was dealing with that. I mean, is he good to go? Is he good for this series?
Yeah, he should be good to go. We're going to get him out there, run around a little bit before the game, but he's in the lineup. He should be fine. It was just, a contusion from the hit by pitch, no soft tissue stuff. So, he'll be ready to go. And
then a bigger question I have, and I think it's one that all White Sox fans have been waiting on, is what's the latest you could tell us about Kyle Teal down in AAA as he rehabs and the chances that maybe we see him this weekend?
I think that we're probably not going to see him this weekend. We got to make sure that he's in a good spot. He has a lot of boxes still to check. He's played the last 3 days. He caught, then DH, then caught yesterday. He gets the day off today, and then we'll catch a bigger chunk of the game tomorrow. So as much as we love Kyle, as soon as we can, we got to make sure that he's in a good spot. Missed a lot of spring training, a lot of time, obviously, with his hamstring. So he'll be back soon.
Well, in the meantime, we've talked about it. Your lineup has been able to pick up, and be able to have the next man up mentality. These are good problems to have when you consider, these are some tough decisions you may have to make once Teal is healthy.
Yeah, that's part of this, and every day in this league, a lot of things can happen, and so. Whenever it is time for some of these guys on the IL to come back, you make the decision you got to make, and if you have tough decisions to make, that can be a good thing because that means a lot of guys are playing well. So we'll see when we get there, but in the meantime, we'll just keep pushing here.
Well, what's been the biggest thing that you learned going from year one to year two that you feel like has helped implement a winning approach to getting you over 500 here in your second season?
I think we came into spring training with just a lot more clarity around the program and what we wanted to do. We made some changes in staff. We had a year with the group to understand the details that we wanted to prioritize with them. And then, we kind of set the tone in spring training, but it's really just these guys and their ability to connect and go out there and play with a lot of energy. It's just really fun to watch on a nightly basis that these guys, whether we're up or we're down, they're really excited to go out and play baseball. And that kind of youthful energy is something that we've leaned into and something that really has been the biggest difference maker for us.
You can tell the vibe in the dugout. We've seen it in the clubhouse as well. Brooke Fletcher, the CHSN reporter, noted the camaraderie, Will, in the clubhouse, the energy. I think she called it like a college clubhouse with all the young guys. What can you say about just this group, this team, and the attitudes that you've seen all these players play with?
Yeah, it's fun to be around, and they bring so much energy to each other. It's really fun to watch because there's so much that's put into, yourself to be able to prepare for your moment and your opportunity. And the great thing about our guys is that they do all that and they work extremely hard, but they also give so much energy to their teammates and the way that they communicate and support each other and they hold themselves accountable. It's just really fun to watch. It's fun to be around. And when it results in winning baseball, it's even more special.
Now, this was unveiled during one of the post-game shows and on the White Sox podcast, the Mike Vasil Magic Wand. I've seen it. I've seen him wave it at people in the dugout. What are its magic powers, and how effective do you think it is?
I don't know specifically what the wand brings, except for just channeling Vasil's energy, which is pretty special in itself. This is a guy that, has made an impact, as much of an impact as you can make for not being on the field. And he's really, kind of the heart and soul of that club and the spirit that they bring to the dugout and the clubhouse and the field every day.
I think it might be a wins above replacement, at least like a 1.5, the wand. If I had to judge it.
Easily.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's a 5-WAR wand. I'm not quite sure yet. We just have to get to the end of the season.
No doubt.
Will Venable joining us, the manager of the Chicago White Sox, ahead of his team's big series against the Cubs, the Crosstown Classic. The White Sox, the hottest team in baseball, longest active winning streak in baseball at 5 straight dubs after sweeping the Royals out of town. Speaking of war, You got a guy on your team with a 2.6 WAR, Davis Martin, who has burst onto the scene. And I'm curious as to what you think has been the biggest key to his jump this season. And he's really, I know it's only a fourth of the way through the season, but it's not that early, Will, to think that he's in the mix for All-Star consideration, even Cy Young consideration.
Yeah, he's been amazing, and really right from the beginning in my relationship with Davis, just been clear that he's very professional, has a really clear understanding of how to attack hitters. He's fearless, and he throws a ton of strikes. And, that is obviously kind of like the foundation of what he's been doing. But then you look at some of the metrics on the slider and some of these other pitches, and he just got really good stuff right now on top of throwing strikes. So he always feels like he's in control. When there's traffic, he's able to navigate it, and just one of those guys that, pretty quickly here this year, you just feel really confident when he's out there that he's going to pitch deep in games, he's going to be effective and give you a chance to win.
How rare is it to have a guy with a pitch mix that deep that can throw seemingly anything in any count?
Yeah, it's rare, and I think for a lot of these guys, you try and, get them into the zone, and you might have to prioritize a pitch or two to make sure that they can do that. And he seems to be able to throw everything in the zone. And I think that, as he, goes from team to team and finds different ways to attack hitters, it just gives him more tools to go out there and attack guys with. And I think that that's a big part of why he's able to be so successful. He's just got a lot of different ways to beat you.
Well, I think a good example of what we've seen out of the success of the Sox in the last month especially has been how measures you had to take at the beginning of the season, like, for example, using Grant Taylor as an opener for a stretch, was just a Band-Aid. It didn't end up having to be something you did into perpetuity. It didn't even have to be something you did for a few weeks. How important were those adjustments that were made at the beginning of the season, just using that to help to get these starting pitchers to where they are right now?
Yeah, I think it was huge, and there was a lot of stuff that we did just because we needed to find out kind of where we were at with things. And so we went into this asking guys to be flexible, not to look too deep into, kind of how we were using guys or playing time up front early, knowing that we were going to get settled into kind of roles and responsibilities that fit our club. And so whether it was, using Acuna as shortstop or using Grant as an opener, just mixing and matching here and there, we had to go through some stuff to figure it out and get settled here. So really excited that we did find a good spot here where guys seem like they're really taken to their roles. They have an understanding of what their job is on a daily basis, and they're going out and executing.
What were some of those conversations like when you had to manage that initially to then learning what you found out for you and then ultimately how you're seeing them perform now?
Yeah, just try to be upfront with the guys, and we know that consistency is something that is really important to guys, and to be able to get in your routine and know what to expect with your role is important. At the same time, the first couple of series, we just didn't feel like we were there and needed to, just make sure that, we had an understanding of how this group was going to fit together. The guys did a great job of being patient. Our coaches did a good job of communicating, and really, the result is now that you got a bunch of guys who are playing selfless baseball, willing to go out and contribute in any way possible, and at the same time, we're kind of giving them a little more consistency in what their roles are.
I'm curious if you're more surprised about the way that you've been able to play since that 1-5 start, or just the way that the rest of the American League has played all season long, kind of hovering around 500 and keeping you in play when you were struggling.
Yeah, no, that first couple of series, we definitely got smacked in the mouth there, and after a really productive spring training where we felt really confident that we were going about it the right way, that our group was working on the right things, we were really just challenged to stay the course, and I thought, from our players to our coaching staff, everyone did a really good job of doing that, knowing that was more of an aberration and not, who we were. And then very quickly we were able to get back on track and be the club that we, went into the season thinking that we could be. So, credit to the group for just staying on track. And, baseball is a long season. We know we have some adversity that we'll have to face in the future here. And, just really excited that the group that we have, and the energy that they bring to help us get through those times.
And Will, I mentioned this, you were a great teacher For a reporter like me, when you were a player in San Diego, you continued to be that way all of your playing career. Then you were that way when you were an assistant. I remember talking to you with the Cubs. You end up with the Red Sox as well before you go to the White Sox. I know you worked with Bruce Bochy too, which was really cool. So that said, your career has evolved, but you've always had that same kind of learning and teaching mentality. To see this get put together in this way, where I feel like your team is also taking that on, and you're evolving as well with them. What have you learned about yourself over the span from then to now, and then how do you compare yourself at this point right now this year with me, and maybe even when you started with the White Sox or when you started back with the Cubs, since it is crosstown, when you decided to get on a coaching staff?
Yeah, no, thanks. I think it's just one of those things where my position, whatever it's been in baseball, obviously there's just so much in this game to learn and continue to grow. And some of the best groups that I've been around, some of the best people that I've been around are people that continue to learn and continue to grow. And that's something that, I bring to the field every day. But really, our group, behaves like that as well. That's just part of who we are. Whether things go well on the field or poorly, there's always things for us to learn and grow from. And that's something really from day one last year that our whole group took to. Our staff does a good job of, giving feedback, making adjustments, and attacking problems differently. So, that's just kind of part of baseball, I feel like. And, good teams, good players, good coaches, are always learning and always growing.
Well, Will, thank you again for joining us. This has been a lot of fun to talk to you, too. And Marshall has one more question. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I just wanted to ask you one more question, Will, about Colson Montgomery, because I know early in the season there was a lot of third base mixed in with shortstop, but of late it seems like he's primarily playing at shortstop, and by the metrics, he's been one of the best defensive shortstops in baseball. I'm curious as to if you're still tinkering with that, because he did play a couple of games at third base earlier this month, or has he secured himself as the everyday shortstop?
No, Colson's our shortstop. You'll find when Mooney has a day off or Vardy has a day off, Colson's going to have to play third base. And so in the rare instances that happens, you will see him move over there. Early on in the year, it was more of, us trying to figure out how our group was going to fit together. And Colson, as good of a shortstop as he is, he may be even a better third baseman. But as our infield defense and our infielders have kind of stabilized and we understand who's going to be out there on a daily basis, he's going to be out there every day at shortstop. But again, in the rare cases that Mooney or Vargas have a day off, we'll shift him over to third.
Makes sense. All the sense in the world. I appreciate the clarification.
Yeah, and Will, thank you again. It has been really fun to have worked with you and have to see you come up through the ranks. Thank you for teaching me so much as a young reporter. Thanks for coming on today. And I didn't call you Wheel, so I feel like I've progressed in that as well.
Oh, no, that's great. And thank you so much, Layla. Thank you guys, and appreciate having me on.